Hello, my name is Voya and welcome to my deep guide and to a very precarious positioning of these three 13.3 Boox devices. Today we're going to be comparing the display performance and image quality of the Boox Tab XC, the Boox Note Max and the Boox Tab X. If you like the work that I do and you would like to support that independence in work, you can head on over to mydeepguide.com/shop, where you can find high quality e-paper and template products for your e-paper devices. MDO, or My Daily Organizer, is a workbook to help you organize all of your personal or professional yearly, quarterly, monthly, weekly, daily needs. It is a completely interlinked workbook, making it an extremely powerful addition to any of your e-paper devices. MMP, or My Deep Guide Meeting Planner, is also a hyperlinked workbook focused on helping you simplify, centralize, and organize all of your meeting planning needs, allowing you seamless navigation between different meetings from the meeting index page, and with each meeting having the ability to have individual agenda and notes. You can also find My Deep Guide Curated Templates, which is a collection of very carefully crafted notebook templates. What makes MDG Curated Templates different, all of them are pixel perfect for the device screen size that you are using them on. This is why there are so many different variations, so that you can choose the one that fits your device perfectly. These templates also maintain a universal 8mm line spacing standard and 4mm grid spacing standard. Purchasing any of these products will enhance your productivity and simplify your organization. You also directly support independence of My Deep Guide. These three devices are the latest devices that Boox has released in the last 2-3 years, with the Tab X being the oldest and having the oldest display technology. It's monochromatic, 207 ppi, 13.3-inch front-lit device. Then we have Note Max, which was released about half a year ago, also monochromatic device, but this time 300 ppi and no front light at all. And the newest addition to the 13.3 lineup is the Tab XC, which is a Kaleido color e-ink display, which has front light and colors. All three devices are very similarly spec'd, with the main difference being that internally Note Max and Tab XC are basically the same device, same internals. The main difference here are going to be display image related and display surface related. Tab X, on the other hand, is using an older type of an SoC, although it does have the same amount of RAM and storage. This video is not going to be a full-on comparison of every aspect between these three devices. As the video title says, I'm primarily going to be focusing on image quality and display performance differences, including writing aspects as well. This testing is done using my own proprietary DAF, or Display Analysis Framework methodology, which is still not completely perfected, but it's getting to a point where I can start to use it and then refine it as I go along before I'm happy with the results and the robustness of the entire methodology. So some of the findings that you will be seeing in videos of this type, where I'm doing the display performance and image quality comparisons between different devices, the numbers will probably change by the time that the DAF methodology is finalized completely, but the relationship between the comparison of devices shouldn't necessarily change, because the methodology and the results that I'm getting are very, very robust and very, very sound already as it is, but there are some edge cases and particularly difficult cases like the Kaleido 3 panel that tends to cause me a lot of headache, but I will get it in time. So that's just a word of kind of transparency, so that you know what to keep in mind and how to approach these findings at this time. All right, and now let's commence with the comparison. All right, so what are we interested in today? Well, we're gonna start with Boox Note Max versus Tab XC, or actually let's do Tab X, and then we add Tab XC. And as usual, let's start with the readability. Starting with Note Max, and it's really not surprising to see very, very strong scores here, because not only is it a 13.3-inch device, but it's also not using a Kaleido panel, therefore it doesn't have the fuzzy CFA filter on top of the content, and it is 300 ppi as opposed to 207 ppi, which is what we've normally seen on screens of 13.3-inch size. And with standard fonts at 100% blackness, 70% blackness, and 50% blackness, we have excellent readability performance across the board. This strong performance is maintained very, very nicely with the thin font at 100% blackness, and even at 50% blackness, it just remains readability across the board. Even at the difficult 6-point font size, 50%, Note Max is able to handle it very, very nicely. Checking out the thick fonts, and we don't have a tremendous amount of bleed with the fonts here, and the E and the O are definitely noticeable and legible between them, which is of course helped by the size, but again also by those 300 ppi, and stepping down to 50% remains perfectly readable. Moving on to Tab X, which has a display at 207 ppi and is also monochromatic, and we see really good readability in standard fonts across the board. With the thin fonts, we can start to actually notice the difference between the 207 ppi and 300 ppi already at 10 points here. We can see that in straight lines we're losing some of the cohesion, which is definitely even more pronounced at the font size 6. And when we step down to thin fonts 50%, yes, it is more uniform, so that kind of helps the scores a little bit, but we can see that it's absolutely fading away here. And I haven't addressed this edge case scenario where I'm getting some false positives with the 6-point, where basically when the signal becomes too weak when compared to the noise, and then the algorithm actually just starts picking up the noise instead of the content itself. I'm working on a solution to fix that all up, but hey ho, that's why all of this testing is for. And the thick fonts are looking good. The size definitely helps here. Not too much bleed, a little bit blurrier than what we've seen on the Note Max, but nothing really dramatic. Although when we go to 50%, we're starting to see kind of inconsistencies in rendering here on the Tab X, which is actually unusual. Not really great uniformity there. And Tab XC we've already looked at, but it would be interesting to just see them back to back compared to the Tab X and Note Max. So we do know that it performs well under standard fonts. If you watched the review of the XC, then you know that the thin fonts at 100% were good, but when you actually step it down to 50%, then the darkness of the screen is simply overpowering. And while this is legible, it is below the threshold, and this would be a justified score 0, but at the same time you can see why I'm calling the Tab X's performance in the same kind of category a false positive, because it is actually less legible than this, yet it's scored higher. So that's something that I'm definitely working on to kind of find a fix that's going to exclude these edge cases. Thick fonts are readable at both 100 and 50% blackness. So how do they all stack against each other? Well, we can clearly see that Note Max blue and Tab X is orange and XC is red. Note Max definitely dominates both other devices in standard and thin fonts, and at thick fonts they are all within the same point category. Actually, the difference between them is less than 1 point, which is in reality basically negligible, so they score pretty much the same, which is to be expected because thick fonts on large displays normally don't have any difficulties. So in the final readability score, the ranking is fairly expected, with Note Max number 1 with its 300 ppi, then Tab X with 207 ppi, and then far behind at 23.81 because of that CFA filter and the darkness of the Kaleido screen and the fuzziness of the Kaleido screen. Tab XC scores the lowest in readability. Moving on to contrast and uniformity measurements, which takes a measurement of how a device renders a pure white and pure black color under different lighting conditions. On the far left we have excellent lighting conditions, average lighting conditions in the middle, and poor lighting conditions on the right hand side, and this test consists out of the display and observable portion of results. First, you're looking at the display portion of results, where the shutter of the camera has been adjusted in such a way so that the captured whiteness of the intensity of the whiteness of the image is matched as closely as possible between each other. And the display portion of the test here is mostly to expose how the artifacts of the screen or imperfections of the screen behave in different lighting conditions. However, far more relevant portion of this test is the observable portion of the test, where the shutter speed has been adjusted in such a way that it mimics as closely as possible to what a human eye will observe in excellent, average, and poor lighting conditions. I've already noticed before that Note Max does have a slightly darker screen than Tab X, for example, and this is why I'm very excited to see a direct comparison and actually compare the numbers here between the two. But for now, let's see the results. So this is Note Max observable under excellent, average, and poor lighting conditions, and we can see that the poor lighting conditions is getting to be really dark, but we're talking about properly poor lighting conditions, something like 125 lux. The blackness remains fairly consistent and strong across the board. Moving on to Tab X, and even in the display portion of the contrast and uniformity test, we can definitely see that the Tab X screen is brighter. So the whites are brighter. The impact on the rendering of the black color is not so dramatic, but what I do notice absolutely is that there's more graininess and more imperfections in the older display on the Tab X. Moving on to the observable portion of results, and that lightness is definitely observable here as well, because both in excellent, average, and poor lighting conditions, Tab X without the front light is brighter than Note Max. Putting up the front light to 50%, the display results look like this, and in the observable results with the front light set to 50%, we can see that the lightness is starting to equalize. It's not perfectly equalized yet between the average and poor lighting conditions, but it's definitely getting there, while the impact on the rendering of the black color is not that severe. However, stepping up the front light to 100% intensity, we definitely see both in display and observable results here that the front light at the maximum level, while brightening up the white color considerably, it is also going to wash out the rendering of the black color, particularly in poor lighting conditions. And here we have the Tab XC with the Kaleido screen, both in display and especially in the observable results. You can see that across the board, rendering of the white color is way darker than on either Tab X and Note Max, but so is the rendering of the black color, because the black color is really black and it's very uniform on the Tab XC. Setting the front light to 50% definitely helps equalize the situation of the white color on average and poor lighting conditions, but it's not really helping it that much because it's still in the area of really dark gray. It's only when we pump up the front light to 100%, this is in display and this is the observable results, that we actually get to see the rendering of the white color pop up. However, in poor lighting conditions, we do see washing out of the black color. And the final results in contrast and uniformity look something like this. Display and observable variability scores, those are the ones that are measuring the whiteness, blackness, and the contrast. And the consistency score, again, display and observable, are measuring the noisiness and uniformity of that noise on these displays. Realistically speaking, the one that you're going to be reacting most to in reality is the OVS score. For the longest time, I was thinking like, hey, do I need a display variability score here? And can I just stick to the observable variability score? But here it's very interesting because it is designed to expose the display quality characteristic differences. And it absolutely does expose that difference in the raw quality of the image that you will get from a different display. And here we can see that the 300 ppi denser, more newer type of a display on Note Max is scoring slightly higher than the older and less uniform display of the Tab X. Predictably, because of the Kaleido darkness and the fuzziness and all of that, Tab XC cannot really compare with the monochromatic devices. And you can see just how big of a difference that really is. So the DVS is kind of showing you, hey, this is the difference in the quality of the image that is going to be displayed, but the OVS is the one that is most impactful for the users because that's basically what you can see. And here again, the results confirm what I observed earlier, which is that the rendering of the white color is darker on the Note Max than it is on the Tab X, and that will pull that score back down, even though I have a sneaky suspicion that the rendering of the blacks is better on Note Max than on the Tab X. And all the way down here at 45.04, we have the Tab XC without the front light. Uniformity of the image is really similar between the Note Max and the Tab X, but here Kaleido panels will dominate simply because they are cheating, because they have an artificially uniform layer on top of the imperfections of the black and white display, which is that color CFA layer, which is way more uniform than the imperfections of the cell structures of the monochromatic display, and therefore it's actually masking the imperfections. But this is an objective result because masking or not, cheating or not, this is the type of uniformity that you will actually end up seeing. And here I wanted to do the comparison between the rendering of the whiteness on the Note Max here on the left hand side and the Tab X on the right hand side, and you can see the results, observable results of course in this case, in excellent, average and poor lighting conditions. And I went ahead and calculated these to see like the percentage by how much is Note Max actually darker in rendering of the white color compared to the Tab X. And in excellent lighting conditions it's 6.94% darker. In average lighting conditions, it's 12% darker, and in the poor lighting conditions, it's actually 20% darker than the Tab X. However, you should also keep in mind that the rendering of the black color is very uniform at 0.92, 91, 91 in all lighting conditions here, and that is higher than the Tab X's 0.88, 87, and 87 here. But despite improved darkness on the Note Max, the darker rendering of the white color Note Max effectively means that, see here, that's contrast. So contrast is 607 in excellent lighting conditions on the Note Max versus 9.89 ratio on the Tab X. In average lighting conditions, Note Max has 8.1 contrast ratio, while the Tab X has 13.67. And when we finally go down to poor lighting conditions, Note Max has 9.82 contrast, while the Tab X has the 15.72 contrast ratio. Tab XC is the only color device among these here, so there's no point really to compare the color accuracy, so we will move on to reflectivity. Starting with Note Max, we get to have rather good intensity levels and excellent sharpness levels here. So the diffusion of the reflected image here is really good. No sharp edges or clear shapes to be seen. Tab X also has good reflectivity characteristics, but we can definitely see more sharpness here, less of a longer diffusion edge, and we can see sharper edges definitely being noticed here when calculating sharpness, which is indicated in the score here. However, there's a problem with this image, and I'm going to show you what that is. On the left hand side we have Note Max, on the right hand side we have Tab X, and even visually you can clearly see that the intensity of the reflection is most definitely higher on the Tab X, yet the value or the score is better, because higher is better here, how it judges intensity. It's actually measuring that it's higher on Tab X than on Note Max. Why is that? For a very simple reason. The crop that is actually being calculated here, you can see that it's slightly skewed, because normally I see both of the edges here. That's how the whole frame is made. But for some strange reason, this crop was different. I checked the raw image and it was normally taken, so I have to kind of investigate a little bit more deeply why this image was cropped this way. But the end result is that we're cutting off a portion of the reflections here, and we're inserting more black pixels here, and that throws off the overall calculation. So I think that the Tab X reflectivity results are going to be slightly more positively skewed because of this crop issue that has occurred. So it's going to be a bit more favorable than what it actually is. And then we take a look at the Tab XC, which has excellent both intensity and sharpness scores, and checking out the final results, and this is that skew that I was talking about. We've seen that out of these three, Tab X definitely has the worst intensity performance, but here we have the mistaken calculation of it being the best. But that's not enough to actually throw off the overall ranking of the results. I think it's just simply going to lose by more because the intensity score is going to go down. But we can see that the intensity levels between NoteMax and Tab XC are very similar, and the same story continues here with the sharpness as well, where both NoteMax and Tab XC score very high, but the Tab XC is scoring exceptionally good here. Next, we're checking the ghosting performance, and this is a fairly straightforward test where I take a photograph of the blank page completely deghosted. I flip 10 pages of text, graphics, or combined text and graphics content, and then go to another blank page and capture the end ghosted results and compare the first and last image and see what the amount of ghosting is in different refresh modes. And NoteMax in HD refresh mode definitely has ghosting issues in text and combined, quite a bit on the combined as well. I'm gonna have to investigate the graphics related score here, because whenever I see a full-on score, that's like an alarm bell. So that's an indication that either thresholds need adjusting or I need to double check the material and see if there's a calculation error or an edge case of some sort. Although we can visually see that it's good performance, but 1.0, that's not supposed to be reachable. In A2 refresh mode, we see these types of ghosting results and effects on the NoteMax. Looking at Tab X, and in HD, we see similar type of results with slightly better combined ghosting here. But as soon as we start stepping down to balanced, yeah, the ghosting is starting to go way higher, and on fast as well, and on ultra fast as well. However, none of these devices have anything to go against the Tab XC, and it's absolutely phenomenal deghosting performance, which is close to 0. So that's really exceptionally good results, and you can just see how clear results are in HD mode and in A2 mode as well. Tab XC is just using some kind of witchcraft to deghost the image, and it's something that you definitely feel on a day-to-day basis. The final results reflect what we've seen, with NoteMax scoring at 59.31, then Tab X considerably worse than NoteMax, but far above them all is the Tab XC at phenomenal 88.11 out of 100. NoteMax is not a front-lit device, so you will be only seeing the Tab X and then Tab XC results here. And we can see that while the intensity curves between these two is fairly similar, the overall temperature of the display and the front light is a lot warmer and less harsh on the Tab XC. I think that a portion of that is most definitely due to the calibration of the front light, but we also can't forget that the Tab XC does have that CFA layer on top, which gives that orangish kind of a tint to all of the content, and that's something that's going to be noticeable with the front light on as well. Moving on to the surface roughness portion of the test, and at 0.658, NoteMax is definitely feeling more closer to a paper-like type of a display roughness than an average screen, but nowhere near what we've seen on the Remarkable Paper Pro, for example. However, a lot better than what we've seen on other comparable devices. But the most important aspect of the surface writing, as far as the writing feel goes, for me at least, I've come to learn, is this profile curve and the character of the roughness, not just the amount. And through this, as a user, you can actually come to understand what are the types of feels or roughnesses that you like and what you can expect from a device to a device. For me, what I'm looking for are three distinct things. The first one is that the valleys are not peaking or bottoming out at a near perfect level. Instead, I like to see this kind of a prolonged or a second-hand amplitude waviness. So we see the valleys kind of going up and down and down and up. So there's like an irregularity, and that's something that I associate with nice writing, especially when it's coupled by really dull valleys. So not super sharp, like sharper peaks here, but the dullness of the valleys, that's a very, very important aspect as well. So that's the second part. And the third part is the overall density of the roughness, and that you can have irregular spacing. So we have quite a bit of spacing here, then just a little bit, then some more, then a little bit more, then another one here. And all of these three combined together, for me at least, this is an example of a surface that I find exceptionally pleasant to write on. Moving on to the Tab X, and this is without a screen protector, of course. So this is the device's natural type of surface. And we can see that, yeah, surface roughness is down to 0.255, which is way smoother and much more glass-like. But again, that profile curve, while it does have that kind of waviness, so we have the valleys being non-uniform and going up and down, which is one of the components. Unfortunately, the two other components of a pleasant writing surface for me are gone here. We have fairly sharp valleys here, and much more importantly, super dense frequency of peaks and valleys, which simply doesn't allow physical space for the tip of the nib to actually go against these imperfections, and therefore it feels a lot smoother. And we get to see the same kind of thing on the Tab XC, except much worse. The surface roughness is even smoother at 0.216, and the frequency is way more intense, and the sharpness of peaks and valleys is also way more intense. So that means that the overall slipperiness and glassiness type of feel on the Tab XC is going to be even more pronounced than it was on the Tab X. And taking a look at the final surface roughness comparison scores, it's no wonder that the Note Max basically obliterates the two Tab X's. And here we have one of the fundamental differences between a Note type of a Boox device and a Tab type of a Boox device. Moving on to the refresh time measurement, and here I record footage at 480 frames per second and simply flip a page from a combined content page to a blank page, and I use the inverted and contrast adjusted image to improve the precision of detecting the frame when the screen has completely settled from the page change. On Note Max in HD mode, it looks like this, and it actually goes fairly quickly at 177.26 milliseconds. That's really, really fast for an HD mode, but as you can clearly see, there are ghosting issues, a very, very clear one. So yeah, you get a lot of speed, but we do get that ghosting issues that we know are present on Note Max. Switching over to A2 mode, we get 131.38 milliseconds and less ghosting on the Note Max. Tab X has 4 refresh modes. HD mode looks like this. So far more traditional type of de-ghosting and clearing out the image, and it takes quite a bit of long time. Moving on to balanced refresh mode, and here we can see the BSR in action. As you can see, once this image is settled, we have these periodical de-ghostings, which I'm not really counting. What I'm counting is the first moment when the image completely settles down, but for all intents and purposes, by the time the image has settled, that clearing out is just simply a bonus thing. The image content has been completely changed by this time. Fast refresh mode, and the ultra fast refresh mode with a ton of ghosting here, and where BSR is gonna have to work like for another, I don't know, 10 minutes or so to maybe have a hope of de-ghosting and clearing out the mess that the ultra fast mode has left behind it. Tab XC, like Note Max, only has HD and A2 refresh modes, but it is performing considerably slower than the Note Max. But in A2 mode, not only is it faster, but it's also much cleaner than Note Max. And the final results here are higher is better, and they represent an average of all of the refresh times that a device has to use. So we can see that Note Max is performing the best because its cumulative average refresh time is the fastest. Then we have Tab X, and then we have the Tab XC. However, we've also seen that on the Tab XC we have the A2 mode, which is offering some of the fastest performance of the devices here. So what I'm actually thinking of introducing in this chart, I'm going to have this final score, but I'm also going to include the different refresh modes graphs containing the actual latency speeds so that users can have a much clearer overview over where which device is performing well or not so well. Writing latency is next, and we start with Boox Note Max. All of the devices are running the latest 4.0.2 version of the update, and we can see consistently really good performance at 14.6 milliseconds in this run on the Note Max. Tab X is not performing that bad, so it has had a bit of an improvement since before at around 31.28 milliseconds of writing latency. And while that's good for a device of its generation, overall we've seen improvements that are very considerable, and this is basically twice as slow as the Note Max. However, then Tab XC comes to the bar, says hold my beer, and presents the result of 6.26 milliseconds, and Note Max and Tab X basically go home. And the final results represent an average between 10 runs of on each of these devices, and Tab X is performing worst at a very respectable 30.86 milliseconds. So this is not a bad result by any means, but it is competing against, you know, really some of the best devices that are currently available on the market. And Note Max has 16.68 milliseconds, with Tab XC averaging out at 7.51. Surface distance is the next one, and here I measure out the distance between the surface of the screen and the actual content of the screen, and we see that Boox Note Max is performing really well at 0.6 or 65. I want it to be kind of conservative and just go like on a safe side, so let's say that it's 65, but it's somewhere between 0.6 and 0.65 millimeters of distance, which is really good, and that's definitely helped by the fact that it doesn't have a front light. And we can see that that's a really significant difference at basically exactly double the distance between the surface of the screen and the display panel itself, because on Tab X that distance is at 1.3 millimeters, and that distance is even higher on the Tab XC at 1.7 millimeters right here. So there's a very clear difference between the surface distance and how connected you feel to the content of the screen between these three devices. And finally we get to the battery performance, and we see that the XC with its massive battery is performing the best in reading with the front light off or on average. Although strangely, with the front light turned on to full, it's actually performing dramatically worse than the Tab X. So that's kind of a strange thing, because we see a really big drop off between front light average and front light set to full. Tab X has this kind of an average, okay-ish type of performance, but not really in the realms of what we've come to expect from e-reader devices. While Note Max, it not being a front lit device, it only has a front light off performance here with 32.38 hours of reading time per charge, which is not great, but it's not really that bad either. Writing performance is done exactly the same way, writing for a certain period of time with the front light off, front light average, and front light set to full. And we can see that the Note Max has the shortest battery life expectancy out of these three devices at 7.14. And interestingly, Tab XC does have consistently slightly lower battery performance than the Tab X when writing. But this is something to be expected because Tab XC has a more powerful and a more power-hungry SoC, which does give it much better performance, but it also spends more battery power. So what is the final tally of the DAF score for these three? Well, we have the Boox Note Max at the front, followed by the Boox Tab XC, and then Boox Tab X as the one performing the last. And to me, this actually makes quite a bit of sense. Despite the Tab XC having the advantage of a front light and color, it also has quite a bit of shortcomings to go along with those advantages, and that pulls it back down. When comparing the e-reader category, the same type of relationship remains with Note Max 1, Tab XC2, Tab X3. Same thing continues in the notebook story as well. And predictably here in the e-tablet category, the Tab XC edges ahead of Note Max simply because it does have that advantage of having a front light and having a color screen. And because it does have that front light, the Tab X is also narrowing the margin. I don't know about you, but for me, the DAF analysis is kind of providing interesting and meaningful insights every time I do a comparison of this type. And for me, it's doing like two things, or one thing basically. It boils down to the same thing. It's explaining or confirming what are the things that I am reacting to on different devices, whether it be positive or a negative type of a reaction. And I'm also happy that it's shaping up to be a strong layer of objectivity, because it's really easy to kind of get lost in some of the, you know, shebang or pizzazz of these devices when you're using them. And this one is basically no nonsense. It's just numbers, it's findings, and it's just gonna present it to you. Hey, here's what it is, you do what you want with it. For me personally, this kind of analysis simply confirmed why I am sticking with the Note Max as my daily driver, and why, oh, that was close. I could have played dominoes with them. And it helps me affirm and confirm what I like by explaining why I'm liking it as well. Please do let me know in the comments down below, what are your thoughts? Do you like the content of this type, and do you find this type of analysis insightful, boring, interesting, or something else? Thank you so much for watching. Stay safe, stay healthy, and see you in the next video. Bye!